The chess piece felt heavier than it should have in his hand, and Natalie Sullivan knew exactly why before he even set the knight down on the wrong square. She had been sitting 3 tables away at the Portland Coffee Collective for the past hour, trying to focus on her laptop screen and the grant proposal that was due in 48 hours. But her eyes kept drifting to the man in the tailored charcoal suit who was playing chess alone. He moved with the kind of confidence that suggested he was used to winning, his jaw set in concentration as he worked through what looked like a famous game, recreating moves from memory or perhaps from a book propped against his briefcase. When his hand hovered over the board and then placed the knight on the completely wrong square, something in Natalie's chest tightened. She had been playing chess since she was 7 years old, taught by her grandfather in his cramped apartment in Queens. The game was in her blood, and watching someone make such a fundamental error felt like hearing a musician hit a wrong note in the middle of a symphony. She tried to look away. This was none of her business. The man was clearly absorbed in his own world, and interrupting strangers was not something Natalie Sullivan did. She was a museum curator, reserved and thoughtful, someone who spent her days with artifacts and paintings, not confronting well-dressed men in coffee shops. But he made another move and then another, and the position on the board became increasingly wrong. It was like watching a car accident in slow motion. Before she could stop herself, Natalie was standing up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. She walked over to his table, her heart hammering in her chest. "Excuse me," she said, her voice coming out softer than she intended. The man looked up, and Natalie found herself staring into the most startlingly blue eyes she had ever seen. He was younger than she had thought from a distance, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that was slightly messy in a way that suggested he had been running his fingers through it. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him more attractive rather than less. "Yes." His voice was deep, cultured, with the kind of accent that came from expensive boarding schools and summers in the Hamptons. Natalie's courage almost failed her. "I'm sorry to bother you, but that knight should be on F6. Not D6. You are recreating the Najdorf variation, right?" From the 1972 Fischer-Spassky match. The man blinked at her, his expression unreadable. For a long, horrible moment, Natalie was certain he was going to tell her to mind her own business or worse, laugh at her presumption. Instead, he looked down at the board, his brow furrowing. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. It transformed his features completely, turning him from intimidating to almost boyish. "You are absolutely right," he said, his voice filled with genuine surprise. "I have been playing this wrong for the past 15 minutes. How did you notice from over there?" Natalie felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I have a thing about chess. I cannot help but notice when someone is playing nearby." "A thing about chess," he repeated, and there was something in his tone that made it sound like a compliment. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Would you like to sit down? I would love to know what else I have been getting wrong." She should have said no. She should have smiled politely and returned to her table and her grant proposal. Instead, Natalie found herself pulling out the chair and sitting down, her coffee forgotten at her own table. "I'm Natalie," she said. "Lucas," he replied, extending his hand across the table. His grip was firm and warm, and Natalie felt an unexpected jolt of electricity at the contact. Lucas Sterling. The name tickled something in the back of her mind, but she could not place it. "So what made you decide to recreate this particular game?" Lucas leaned back in his chair, regarding her with open curiosity. "I have a meeting in an hour, and I needed to clear my head. Chess usually helps me think, though apparently I should not try to do it from memory." "You were doing fine until move 11, Natalie said, studying the board. "Here, let me show you where it went off track." She began resetting the pieces, her fingers moving with practiced ease. Lucas watched her with an intensity that made her hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. When she started explaining the correct sequence of moves, he listened with complete attention, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood the game better than his errors had suggested. "You play?" Natalie asked after they had worked through the problematic section. "I used to play a lot in college, not competitively, but I was decent." Lucas's smile turned self-deprecating. "Clearly, I have gotten rusty." "You are not rusty, you just need practice." Natalie glanced at her watch and was shocked to see that 20 minutes had passed. "I should get back to my work." "What do you do?" Lucas asked, and there was genuine interest in his voice. "I am a curator at the Portland Museum of Art, Renaissance paintings mostly. Right now, I am writing a grant proposal to acquire a collection that just became available," she grimaced. "It is not going well. Writer's block, more like budget block. I am trying to convince a committee that we should spend money we do not really have on paintings that most people have never heard of." Natalie stood up, reluctant to leave but knowing she had to. "Thank you for letting me correct your chess game. I know it was presumptuous of me." "Not at all. You saved me from ingraining the wrong moves in my memory." Lucas stood as well, pulling a card from his wallet. "This might sound forward, but would you be interested in finishing this game sometime? A real game, not a recreation." Natalie took the card, her fingers brushing his again. The business card was heavy, expensive cardstock with simple black lettering. Lucas Sterling, CEO, Sterling Industries. Her eyes widened as recognition finally hit her. Sterling Industries was one of the largest manufacturing companies in the Pacific Northwest, with ventures in everything from aerospace components to sustainable building materials. She had read an article about them just last month in the business section of the newspaper. Lucas must have seen the recognition in her eyes because his expression became guarded. "Is that a problem?" "No," Natalie said quickly. "I just did not realize, I should have. Sterling Industries is one of the museum's donors." "A small donation," Lucas said, waving his hand dismissively. "My grandfather started it years ago. I just keep it going." Natalie looked down at the card again, at the phone number printed beneath his name. "I would like to finish the game," she said, making a decision. "When are you free?" "Tomorrow evening. There is a chess club downtown that stays open late, or if you would prefer something more private, I have a decent set at my office." "The chess club sounds perfect," Natalie said, not ready for the intimacy of his office. 7 o'clock. It is a date." Lucas smiled again, that transforming smile that made Natalie's stomach flip. "Though I should warn you, I am competitive, even if my memory is faulty." "So am I," Natalie said, surprising herself with the flirtatious note in her voice. "You have been warned." She walked back to her table on unsteady legs, very aware of Lucas's eyes on her back. When she finally dared to glance in his direction again, he was packing up his chess set, but he caught her looking and gave her a small wave before leaving the coffee shop. Natalie stared at her laptop screen, at the grant proposal that suddenly seemed much less important than it had an hour ago. She had just agreed to play chess with Lucas Sterling, CEO and millionaire, a man so far out of her league that it was almost laughable. Except he had not seemed like a millionaire CEO when he was sitting across from her, listening intently as she explained chess moves. He had seemed like just a man, intelligent and charming and maybe a little bit lonely, playing chess by himself in a coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon. Natalie saved her document and closed her laptop. There was no way she was going to get any more work done today. Instead, she pulled up her phone and sent a text to her best friend, Maya. "You will never believe who I just met." The response came back almost immediately. "Tell me everything." As Natalie typed out the story, she could not stop smiling. She had lived in Portland for 5 years, ever since taking the job at the museum, and her social life had been virtually non-existent. Between the demanding hours and her natural introversion, she had let herself become isolated, comfortable in her small apartment with her books and her online chess games. Now, suddenly, she had something to look forward to, someone to look forward to. The next evening, Natalie changed her outfit 3 times before finally settling on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that Maya had given her for Christmas. She applied more makeup than usual, then wiped half of it off, not wanting to look like she was trying too hard. The Portland Chess Club was located in a converted warehouse in the Pearl District, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Natalie had been there a few times over the years, mostly for tournaments she was too nervous to actually enter. The space was filled with tables, each one hosting a different game, and the air hummed with concentration and the soft click of pieces on boards. Lucas was already there when she arrived, leaning against the wall near the entrance. He had traded his suit for jeans and a dark green Henley that emphasized his broad shoulders, and Natalie felt her mouth go dry at the sight of him. "You came," he said, pushing off from the wall with a grin. "Did you think I would not? I was not sure. You might have Googled me and decided I was not worth the trouble." His tone was light, but Natalie caught something underneath it, a hint of vulnerability that made her heart squeeze. "I did Google you," Natalie admitted. "Impressive portfolio. The work Sterling Industries is doing in sustainable manufacturing is really innovative." Lucas's expression softened. "You actually read about the company. Most people just see the dollar signs." "I am a museum curator. We are not really in it for the money." Natalie gestured toward the room. "Should we find a table?" They chose a spot in the back corner, away from the more intense games happening near the front. Lucas set up the board with careful precision, and Natalie noticed that his hands were steady, confident. These were hands that built things, that signed important contracts, but right now they were just arranging chess pieces with the same care she gave to positioning artwork in gallery spaces. "White or black?" Lucas asked. "You choose." He gave her white, which meant she would move first. Natalie opened with her king's pawn, a classic start, and Lucas responded immediately with his own pawn. They played in comfortable silence for the first few moves, feeling each other out, learning each other's style. Lucas was better than he had given himself credit for. His strategy was aggressive but not reckless, and he saw patterns developing on the board several moves ahead. Natalie found herself having to concentrate in a way she had not had to in years, not since her grandfather had been alive, and they would play marathon sessions that lasted until sunrise. "You are very good at this," Lucas said after capturing one of her bishops. "So are you. Where did you learn to play?" "My father taught me. It was one of the few things we did together." Lucas's expression grew distant. "He died when I was 23, right after I finished business school. I inherited the company before I was really ready for it." "I am sorry," Natalie said softly. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was, still is sometimes." Lucas moved his rook, putting pressure on her queen's side. "But I had good people around me and I learned fast. What about you?" "Who taught you?" "My grandfather. He was a chess master in Russia before he immigrated to America. He never quite adjusted to life here, but chess was his constant. We would play for hours in his apartment, and he would tell me stories about the great players he had watched." Natalie smiled at the memory. "He died 3 years ago. I miss him every day." "Is that why you play, to stay connected to him?" "Partly, but also because I love it. There is something beautiful about chess, the way every game is different but follows the same rules. It is like art in that way. Infinite variation within a defined structure." Lucas looked up from the board, his blue eyes meeting hers. I like the way you think about things. The intensity of his gaze made Natalie's pulse quicken. She moved her knight, more to break the moment than because it was the best strategic choice, and Lucas immediately capitalized on the error, putting her king in check. They played for over an hour, both games ending in stalemates. By the time they finally stopped, Natalie's brain felt pleasantly exhausted, the way it always did after a good mental workout. I need food, Lucas announced, standing and stretching. Have you eaten? No, Natalie admitted. There is an Italian place 2 blocks from here. Best carbonara in the city. Interested? Natalie knew she should probably say no, should maintain some distance and mystery. But she was hungry, and more than that, she was not ready for the evening to end. Lead the way. The restaurant was small and intimate, the kind of place where the owner knew the regulars by name. Lucas was clearly a regular because the hostess greeted him warmly and led them to a corner booth without being asked. You come here often? Natalie asked as she settled into the worn leather seat. Once or twice a week. The owner, Giuseppe, is from my grandmother's hometown in Italy. He reminds me of family. Lucas handed her a menu, though he did not open his own. Do you trust me to order for us? Should I? Absolutely. Unless you are vegetarian, in which case I need to know now. I am not. Order away. Lucas spoke to the waiter in fluent Italian, and Natalie listened with surprise and pleasure. There was something incredibly attractive about a man who could speak another language, especially one as musical as Italian. When the waiter left, Natalie leaned forward. Where did you learn Italian? I spent 2 years in Milan right after college, working at one of our manufacturing plants. It was my father's way of making sure I understood the business from the ground up. I started on the factory floor and worked my way up. Lucas took a sip of the water the waiter had brought. Best 2 years of my life, honestly. No one knew who I was or cared about my last name. I was just another American kid trying to figure out how to assemble airplane components. Do you miss it? The simplicity. Every single day. Lucas's expression was rueful. Now every decision I make affects hundreds of people's livelihoods. It is a responsibility I do not take lightly. The food arrived, and it was as good as Lucas had promised. They talked through dinner about everything and nothing: her work at the museum, his frustrations with corporate bureaucracy, their shared love of old movies, their differing opinions on whether dogs or cats made better pets. Dogs, Lucas said firmly. Loyal, honest, always happy to see you. Cats, Natalie countered. Independent, mysterious, affectionate on their own terms. That sounds like a nightmare to me. I want to know where I stand. But is not there something appealing about having to earn affection, about it being a choice rather than a given? Lucas regarded her thoughtfully. Is that how you approach relationships, making people earn your affection? The question caught Natalie off guard. I do not know. I have not had many relationships to base that on. That is hard to believe. You are beautiful, intelligent, and you can play chess. Men must be lining up. Natalie felt herself blushing. I am not great at meeting people. I spend most of my time with artwork that is 500 years old, not exactly a social lifestyle. I understand that. My last relationship ended 2 years ago because I was married to my work. She was not wrong. Lucas signaled for the check. Since then, I have been on exactly 3 dates, all of them disasters orchestrated by well-meaning friends. What made them disasters? They were not interested in me. They were interested in Lucas Sterling, CEO. There is a difference. Natalie thought about that as Lucas paid the bill, waving away her attempts to contribute. She understood what he meant. In her limited dating experience, she had encountered men who were more interested in the idea of dating a museum curator than in actually getting to know her. The fantasy was always more appealing than the reality. "For what it is worth," Natalie said as they stepped out into the cool Portland evening, "I think I prefer the version of you that makes mistakes in chess games." Lucas's smile was genuine and warm. "That is the nicest thing anyone has said to me in a long time." He hesitated, then asked, "Can I walk you to your car?" "I took the bus." "Then let me drive you home, please. I promise I am not an axe murderer." "That is exactly what an axe murderer would say," Natalie teased, but she was already nodding. "Okay, but if you try anything, I should warn you I have a black belt in running away." Lucas laughed, a rich sound that made several passers-by turn and smile. Julie noted. His car was parked in a nearby garage, and Natalie tried not to let her eyes widen when she saw the sleek black Tesla. Of course, he drove a Tesla. He probably owned stock in the company. The drive to her apartment in the Hawthorne district took 20 minutes, and they spent it listening to a jazz playlist that Lucas had curated himself. When he pulled up in front of her building, a modest 3-story structure with more character than luxury, Natalie felt oddly reluctant to leave. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "I had a really good time, so did I." Lucas turned in his seat to face her. "Can I see you again? And before you ask, yes, I mean for something other than chess. I would like that. How about Saturday?" "There is a new exhibit opening at the Art Museum downtown. I thought maybe you could tell me what I am looking at." Natalie's heart swelled. He had clearly done some research, found something he thought she would enjoy. "I would love to, but I have to work Saturday morning." "The museum is hosting a school group." "What time are you done?" "Around 2. "Perfect. I will pick you up at 3. Wear comfortable shoes. I have plans." "Should I be worried?" "Only if you hate beauty and culture," Lucas said with a grin. Natalie climbed out of the car, then leaned back in through the open door. "Thank you again, Lucas. Really. Thank you for correcting my chess game. Best mistake I ever made." She watched him drive away, then practically floated up to her apartment. Maya called 5 seconds after she walked through the door. "Well," her friend demanded. "How was it?" "Maya, I think I am in trouble," Natalie said, collapsing onto her couch. "Good trouble or bad trouble, I do not know yet. Ask me after Saturday." The week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Natalie threw herself into work, finalizing her grant proposal and preparing for the school group visit, but her mind kept wandering to Lucas. They texted sporadically. He was busy with a major deal that required his constant attention, and she respected his time, but each message made her smile. On Thursday, a delivery arrived at the museum. Natalie signed for the package, confused, then opened it to find a beautiful wooden chess set, the pieces hand-carved and weighted perfectly. The note inside read, "For the next time you need to correct someone's terrible playing." She ran her fingers over the smooth wood, marveling at the craftsmanship. This was not a mass-produced set. This was art, each piece unique and carefully made. She texted him immediately. "You did not have to do this." His response came quickly. "I wanted to." "Consider it a thank you for teaching me to play properly." "You already knew how to play properly." "Did I? I seem to remember making quite a few mistakes." Natalie could practically hear the teasing in his text. She smiled and tucked her phone away, feeling lighter than she had in years. Saturday arrived bright and sunny, one of those perfect Portland spring days when the city showed off its best features. The school group visit went smoothly, and Natalie found herself unusually energetic, despite the chaos of managing 30 excited 10-year-olds through Renaissance galleries. She went home to change, settling on a sundress and the comfortable walking shoes Lucas had recommended. He arrived exactly at 3, looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked. "Always." He would not tell her where they were going, just drove them across the city with a secretive smile. When they finally parked, Natalie realized they were at the Japanese garden in Washington Park. "I know you spend your days with Italian Renaissance art," Lucas said as they walked toward the entrance, "but I thought you might appreciate a different kind of beauty." The garden was breathtaking, all carefully manicured paths and water features, with the spring flowers in full bloom. They walked slowly, not rushing, letting the peace of the space wash over them. "My mother used to bring me here when I was a kid," Lucas said as they crossed a red wooden bridge over a koi pond. "She said it taught her perspective. That no matter how big our problems seemed, nature had its own rhythm that we were just a small part of." She sounds wise. She is. She lives in Seattle now, spends most of her time painting and volunteering at a homeless shelter. Lucas smiled. "She thinks I work too much. Do you?" "Definitely, but I am trying to find more balance. Tonight is part of that." They found a bench overlooking a waterfall and sat down, close enough that their shoulders touched. Natalie felt hyper-aware of every point of contact, every breath. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas said after a moment of comfortable silence. "Of course. What made you come over to my table at the coffee shop? You seem like someone who values privacy. That must have taken courage." Natalie considered the question. "I could not stand watching you get it wrong. It physically pained me." "I know that sounds ridiculous." "It does not. It sounds like you care deeply about things being done right. That is not ridiculous at all." Lucas turned to face her. "I am glad you did. I have not been able to stop thinking about you all week." "I have been thinking about you too," Natalie admitted, her heart pounding. Lucas reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. His palm was warm and slightly rough, and Natalie wondered if that was from actual work or just from living. "I want to be honest with you about something," Lucas said, his voice serious. "Dating someone like me comes with complications. There is media attention sometimes and business obligations and people who will judge you for being with me before they even know your name. I do not want to subject you to that unless you are really interested in seeing where this goes." Natalie looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. "Are you trying to scare me away?" "No. God, no. I am trying to make sure you know what you might be getting into." "Lucas, I am a grown woman. I can make my own decisions about what complications I am willing to deal with." She squeezed his hand. "And right now I am very interested in seeing where this goes." The smile that spread across his face was radiant. "Yeah. He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. Natalie did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and questioning, a first kiss that felt both thrilling and safe. She leaned into him, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart beating as fast as her own. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the moment you told me my night was in the wrong position." "You have terrible timing then. You should have kissed me when we were alone, not in a public garden." "Would you like me to take you somewhere private so I can kiss you again?" Natalie's breath caught. "Yes." They left the garden hand in hand, both of them walking a little faster than necessary. Lucas drove them to a beautiful house in the West Hills, modern and glass-walled with a view of the entire city spreading out below. "This is your house?" Natalie asked, slightly awed. "Home, sweet home." "My architect called it my fortress of solitude." She was not wrong. Lucas unlocked the door and led her inside. The interior was all clean lines and expensive furniture, but it felt lived in rather than sterile. There were books scattered on tables, a sweater thrown over the back of a chair, coffee mugs in the sink. "It is beautiful," Natalie said honestly. "It is lonely," Lucas replied, "but maybe less so now." He took her on a tour, showing her the chef's kitchen that he admitted he barely used, the home office where he spent too many late nights, and finally the deck that wrapped around the back of the house, offering an unobstructed view of downtown Portland and Mount Hood in the distance. They stood at the railing, Lucas's arms wrapped around Natalie from behind, and watched the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. "Tell me something true," Lucas said, his breath warm against her ear. "What do you mean? Something real about yourself. Something you do not tell most people." Natalie thought about it. "I am terrified that I am not good enough at my job, that one day someone will realize I am just pretending to be an expert and I will lose everything I have worked for." Lucas's arms tightened around her. "That is imposter syndrome. I get it too all the time. Every board meeting I am convinced someone will call me out as a fraud." "Really? You seem so confident." "Fake it until you make it," Lucas said with a soft laugh. "My turn. Something true." He paused. "I have not brought anyone here in over a year. This place feels very personal to me, and you are the first person I have wanted to share it with in a long time." Natalie turned in his arms to face him. "I am glad you did." They kissed again, longer this time with more certainty. Lucas's hands tangled in her hair, and Natalie pressed closer, wanting to eliminate every inch of space between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas suggested dinner. He cooked, which surprised Natalie until he admitted that he had spent his 2 years in Milan learning as much about Italian cooking as about manufacturing. "My landlady, Signora Morty, took pity on me eating nothing but pasta with butter. She taught me the basics, and I built from there." The basics apparently included a perfect risotto and pan-seared salmon with herbs Natalie could not identify. They ate on the deck as the city lights began to twinkle below them, and Natalie thought she had never been happier. "I do not want this night to end," she said as Lucas opened a bottle of wine. "Then do not let it stay." Natalie met his eyes. "I would like that." They stayed up talking until almost midnight, curled together on his couch, learning each other's stories. Lucas told her about the pressure of running a company he had never wanted to run, about his complicated relationship with his legacy and his fear that he would never be enough. Natalie told him about her loneliness in Portland, about how she had poured herself into work to avoid admitting she was not building a real life. "I think we both needed to meet each other," Lucas said, running his fingers through her hair. "Even if it took you correcting my terrible chest to make it happen." "It was not that terrible. It was pretty bad." Natalie laughed, then yawned. Lucas stood and offered his hand. "Guest room is made up, unless you would rather stay with me." "Guest room," Natalie said firmly, though part of her wanted to say yes to his unspoken offer. "We are taking this slowly, remember? Slowly." "Right." Lucas walked her down the hallway and opened a door to a beautifully appointed room. "Bathroom is through there. If you need anything, I am just next door." He kissed her good night, soft and sweet, then left her alone. Natalie borrowed a t-shirt from the drawer Lucas pointed out, brushed her teeth with a spare toothbrush still in its package, and climbed into the most comfortable bed she had ever experienced. She fell asleep smiling, her phone on the nightstand showing 3 texts from Maya demanding updates. In the morning, Natalie woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She padded out to the kitchen in Lucas's t-shirt and her dress from yesterday to find him cooking breakfast, his hair messy and his feet bare. "Good morning," he said, looking up with a grin. "I hope you are hungry." They ate on the deck again, watching the city wake up below them. Everything felt natural and easy, as though they had been doing this for years instead of days. "I have to go into the office this afternoon," Lucas said reluctantly. "There is a meeting with investors that I cannot reschedule, but I am free tomorrow. Would you like to do something?" "I have plans with Maya tomorrow. She has been my friend since college, and I have been a terrible friend lately, canceling on her constantly for work. I cannot cancel again. I understand. What about dinner tomorrow night, after you see Maya? That works. Want to come to my place? I will cook. Fair warning, I am not nearly as good as you. I would love that. Lucas drove her home, kissing her thoroughly before she got out of the car. Natalie floated up to her apartment, already mentally planning what she would make for dinner the next evening. Maya arrived at noon on Sunday, bursting through the door with bagels and an expectant expression. Tell me everything, and I mean everything. They settled on Natalie's small couch, and Natalie recounted the past week, from the coffee shop encounter to staying at Lucas's house. Maya listened with increasing excitement. Natalie, this is amazing. You are dating a millionaire CEO who cooks and speaks Italian. How is this your life? I do not know. It does not feel real yet. Is he good to you? Like really good? He is wonderful. Thoughtful and funny and real, you know. He does not act like his money makes him special. If anything, he seems kind of uncomfortable with the whole wealthy CEO thing. Good, because you deserve someone who treats you like the incredible person you are. Maya bit into her bagel. So when do I get to meet him? Soon, I promise. I just want to make sure this is real before I introduce him to people. Natalie Sullivan, Queen of Caution, Maya teased. But seriously, I am happy for you. You have been alone for too long. They spent the afternoon together, catching up on everything they had missed in each other's lives. When Maya finally left, Natalie cleaned her apartment and started preparing dinner. She had decided on homemade pasta with a simple butter and sage sauce, something her grandmother had taught her to make years ago. Lucas arrived at 7 with flowers and a bottle of wine, looking slightly nervous. I know you said you would cook, but I brought reinforcements just in case. Just in case my cooking is terrible. Just in case you need backup. I am a team player. Dinner went perfectly. The pasta turned out better than Natalie had hoped, and Lucas praised every bite with genuine enthusiasm. They ate at her small kitchen table, knees bumping, laughing over stories about their worst dating experiences. I once went on a date with a guy who spent the entire evening talking about his CrossFit routine, Natalie said. In detail, with demonstrations. I went out with someone who brought her life coach to dinner, Lucas countered. Apparently, she wanted an expert opinion on my energy. What did the life coach say? That I had commitment issues and unresolved trauma. She was not entirely wrong, but it was not great first date conversation. After dinner, they washed dishes together, moving around Natalie's tiny kitchen in a dance that felt practiced. Lucas pulled her close, soap suds still on his hands, and kissed her until she forgot about everything except the feeling of being in his arms. Stay, Natalie whispered against his lips. Are you sure? Very sure. That night, wrapped in Lucas's arms in her own bed, Natalie felt something shift inside her. This was not just attraction or excitement about something new. This was the beginning of something real, something that could change her entire life. They fell into a rhythm over the next few weeks. Lucas would come to her apartment after work, or she would drive to his house after the museum closed. They cooked together, played chess, watched old movies curled up on the couch. On weekends, they explored Portland, finding hidden restaurants and bookstores, walking through neighborhoods Natalie had never visited despite living in the city for 5 years. Lucas introduced her to his mother, Elizabeth, over brunch at a waterfront restaurant. Elizabeth was elegant and warm, with the same blue eyes as her son, and she embraced Natalie like a long-lost daughter. Lucas has told me so much about you, Elizabeth said, taking Natalie's hands. I am so glad he found someone who appreciates him for who he is. Mom, Lucas protested, but he was smiling. It is true, you have been lonely for too long, sweetheart. Elizabeth turned back to Natalie. "Tell me about your work at the museum. Lucas says you are brilliant." They talked for hours, and by the end of brunch, Natalie felt like she had known Elizabeth for years. As they were leaving, Elizabeth hugged her tightly and whispered, "Thank you for making my son happy." In late May, Natalie's grant proposal was approved, and the museum acquired the Renaissance collection she had been fighting for. The director threw a small celebration, and Natalie invited Lucas as her date. "I am so proud of you," Lucas said as they stood in front of one of the newly acquired paintings, a small but exquisite Madonna and Child from the 1490s. "You worked so hard for this. I could not have done it without you. You helped me refine my argument, remember? All those late nights going over the proposal. That was all you. I just asked questions." Lucas squeezed her hand. "Though I have to admit I have learned more about Renaissance art in the past month than in my entire life. Is that a complaint? Never. I love listening to you talk about your passion. Your whole face lights up." The summer passed in a blur of happiness. Natalie met Lucas's close friends, a group of college buddies who treated her like she had always been part of their circle. Lucas met Maya and won her approval within 5 minutes by asking intelligent questions about her work as a physical therapist. They took a long weekend trip to the coast, staying in a small inn where they walked the beach at sunrise and fell asleep to the sound of waves. Lucas told her he was falling in love with her while they watched the sunset from a rocky overlook, and Natalie said the words back without hesitation. "I know it has only been a few months," Lucas said, pulling her close, "but I cannot imagine my life without you now. I feel the same way. You have changed everything for me." In August, trouble arrived in the form of a business deal gone wrong. One of Sterling Industries' major partners was pulling out of a contract, threatening to tank a project that Lucas had spent 2 years developing. He came to Natalie's apartment one evening looking exhausted and defeated. "I do not know what to do," he admitted, collapsing onto her couch. "If this deal falls through, I will have to lay off nearly 100 people. These are people with families, mortgages, lives that depend on their paychecks." Natalie sat beside him, taking his hand. "Tell me everything. Maybe talking it through will help." Lucas explained the situation in detail, and Natalie listened carefully, asking clarifying questions. She might not know anything about manufacturing, but she understood negotiations from her work securing artwork and funding. "What if you approach it like a chess game?" she suggested. "Right now, you are looking at it as a direct confrontation. But in chess, sometimes the best move is the unexpected one. What is the partner's real objective?" Lucas looked at her thoughtfully. "They want to minimize risk. They are worried about the timeline. So what if you offer to take on more of the risk yourself? Show them you are confident enough in the project to put your own money on the line. That is a significant financial gamble, but you believe in the project, right? Completely. Then maybe that belief is what you need to communicate. Not with data or projections, but with your willingness to bet on yourself." Lucas pulled her into a fierce hug. "You are brilliant. How did I get so lucky?" The next day, Lucas restructured the deal the way Natalie had suggested. It worked. The partner agreed to stay and the project was saved. Lucas called her from his office, his voice jubilant. "You did it. You saved 100 jobs." "You did it," Natalie corrected. "I just offered a different perspective." "No, we did it. Together. Natalie, I want you to be part of my life in every way, not just the personal stuff. I want your voice in my business decisions, your perspective on the hard choices. Lucas, I do not know anything about running a company. You know about strategy and people and passion. That is what matters most." That conversation shifted something between them. They stopped being just two people dating and became true partners, supporting each other's work and dreams with equal investment. In September, Sterling Industries was approached by a company looking to acquire them for a staggering sum. Lucas came to Natalie in turmoil. "It is enough money that I would never have to work again. I could sell and walk away and do anything I wanted." "What do you want?" Natalie asked. "I do not know. Part of me wants to take the money and run. But another part feels like I would be abandoning my father's legacy and all the people who depend on Sterling Industries." "What does your gut tell you?" Lucas was quiet for a long time. "That I would regret selling. That there is more work to do, more innovation to pursue." "But I am tired, Natalie. I have been carrying this responsibility since I was 23, and sometimes I just want to be free of it." "So do not carry it alone anymore. You have a great team. Delegate more. Trust the people around you to share the burden." Natalie took his hands. "And you have me. Let me help carry the weight when it gets too heavy." Lucas searched her face. "You really mean that?" "Completely. I love you, Lucas. Your struggles are my struggles now." He decided not to sell. Instead, he restructured the company leadership, promoting several long-time employees into executive positions and reducing his own day-to-day responsibilities. It gave him more freedom without abandoning the legacy. By October, they had been together for 7 months, and Natalie could not remember what her life had been like before Lucas. They talked about moving in together, about the future, about what they wanted out of life. "I want kids someday," Lucas said one evening as they cooked dinner in his kitchen. 2 or 3, I think. I want them to grow up feeling loved and supported, not pressured to live up to impossible standards." "I want that too," Natalie said. "I want to give them the kind of childhood I had, full of curiosity and learning and adventure." "So we are on the same page, completely." In November, Lucas planned an elaborate surprise for Natalie's 30th birthday. He claimed they were going to dinner, but instead drove her to the Portland airport where a private plane was waiting. "Lucas, what is this?" Natalie demanded, equal parts excited and nervous. "Trust me. Just for the weekend, I promise you will love it." The plane took them to San Francisco, where Lucas had booked a suite at a beautiful hotel near the water. The next morning, they went to the Palace of Fine Arts, one of the city's hidden gems, and Lucas led her to a quiet spot overlooking the lagoon. "I brought you here because it reminds me of what you said about chess," Lucas began, his voice slightly shaky. "About infinite variation within a defined structure. I think that is what I want for us. The structure of commitment and partnership, but with infinite possibilities within that framework." He knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket, and Natalie's breath caught. "Natalie Sullivan, you walked into my life because you could not stand to watch me make mistakes. You have been correcting my course ever since, making me better and stronger and happier than I ever imagined possible. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect. A simple sapphire surrounded by diamonds, elegant and understated. Natalie looked down at Lucas, at this man who had transformed her world, and felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes. Of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, lifting her into his arms and spinning her around while she laughed through her tears. People around them applauded, and Lucas kissed her like they were the only 2 people in the world. "I love you so much," he murmured against her lips. "I love you too. Forever." They spent the rest of the weekend celebrating, calling family and friends, making plans. Elizabeth cried happy tears on the phone, and Maya screamed so loudly that Natalie had to hold the phone away from her ear. The wedding was planned for the following May, a full year after they had met. Natalie threw herself into preparations while juggling her work at the museum, where she had been promoted to senior curator. Lucas was equally busy with Sterling Industries, which was in the middle of launching a groundbreaking new sustainable manufacturing process. Despite their hectic schedules, they made time for each other every single day. Morning coffee together, even if they had to wake up at 5. Dinner dates, even if it meant meeting at a food cart between meetings. Chess games late at night when the world was quiet and it was just the two of them and the board. "You remember that first game we played?" Natalie asked one February evening as Lucas put her in check. "At the chess club, I remember thinking you were going to destroy me. You held your own." "Barely. You are still better than I am." "That is because I practice more, or because you are naturally gifted." Lucas moved his queen. "Checkmate." Natalie stared at the board, then at Lucas. "How did I not see that coming? Because you were distracted. What is on your mind?" She had been waiting for the right moment to tell him, and apparently this was it. "I am pregnant." Lucas froze, his hand still on the queen. "You are what?" "Pregnant. About 6 weeks. I found out this morning." Natalie watched his face anxiously. "I know we said we would wait until after the wedding, but apparently life had other plans." Lucas stood so abruptly his chair fell over, and then he was pulling Natalie into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby. This is the best news. The absolute best news." He pulled back to look at her, his hands cradling her face. "Are you happy? Please tell me you are happy." "I am terrified and excited and so incredibly happy," Natalie said honestly. "We are going to be parents, Lucas." "We are going to be amazing parents," Lucas said firmly. "Our kid is going to be so loved and so supported and so completely cherished." They decided to move the wedding up, not wanting to wait until Natalie was 7 months pregnant. With Elizabeth and Maya's help, they planned a smaller, more intimate ceremony for late March. The wedding took place in the Japanese garden where Lucas had first kissed Natalie, with only 50 guests and a simple elegance that reflected who they were as a couple. Natalie wore a flowing cream dress that accommodated her barely visible baby bump, and Lucas looked more handsome than should be legal in his tailored dark suit. As they exchanged vows under a cherry blossom tree in full bloom, Natalie thought back to that afternoon in the coffee shop when she had worked up the courage to correct a stranger's chess moves. She had been so nervous, so sure he would dismiss her or laugh at her presumption. Instead, she had found her person, her partner, her love. "I promise to support your dreams and share your burdens," Lucas said, his voice steady but his eyes wet with tears. "I promise to play chess with you even when I lose, to correct my mistakes when you point them out, and to love you more with every passing day." "I promise to challenge you and stand beside you," Natalie replied. "I promise to share your victories and your struggles, to believe in you when you doubt yourself, and to love you for exactly who you are." When they kissed as husband and wife, their guests cheered, and Natalie felt a sense of absolute rightness settle over her. This was her life now. This beautiful, unexpected, perfectly imperfect life. The reception was held at Lucas's house, catered by Giuseppe's restaurant and filled with laughter and music and joy. Elizabeth gave a speech about how happy she was to see her son finally finding peace, and Maya made everyone cry with her toast about two people who were meant to find each other. As the sun set over Portland, Lucas and Natalie slow danced on the deck, his hand resting protectively over her stomach. "Thank you," Lucas whispered into her hair. "For what?" "For walking over to my table that day. For taking a chance on me, for changing my entire world." "You changed mine too," Natalie said. "I was so lonely before you, I did not even realize how lonely until suddenly I was not anymore. We are never going to be lonely again. We have each other and soon we will have our baby, and we are building this beautiful life together." Their daughter, Lily Rose Sterling, was born on a rainy September morning, weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces. She had Lucas's blue eyes and Natalie's dark hair, and from the moment she entered the world, she owned both her parents completely. Lucas cried when he held her for the first time, this tiny, perfect human they had created together. "Hello, Lily," he whispered. "I am your dad, and I am going to love you forever." Natalie watched them together, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her family. This was the life she had built from a single moment of courage in a coffee shop. 18 months later, their son James arrived, equally perfect and equally adored. The house that had once been Lucas's lonely fortress became filled with toys and laughter, and the constant chaos of small children. Natalie took a part-time position at the museum, allowing her more time at home while still pursuing her passion for Renaissance art. Lucas continued to run Sterling Industries, but with better boundaries and more balance. They hired help when they needed it and leaned on Elizabeth and Maya. When things got overwhelming on their 3rd wedding anniversary, Lucas set up the chess set Natalie had given him years ago, the beautiful hand-carved one he had sent to the museum. "One game," he said, "for old time's sake." "You are going to lose," Natalie warned. "Probably. But I will lose to my wife in our home with our children sleeping upstairs. I cannot think of a better way to spend an evening." They played slowly, talking between moves about their days and their dreams and their plans. Lily would start preschool in the fall. James was learning to walk. The museum wanted Natalie to curate a major exhibition next year. Sterling Industries was expanding into new markets. Lucas was losing, as Natalie had predicted, but he did not seem to mind. When she finally put him in checkmate, he stood and stretched, then walked around the table to kiss her. "You ever think about how different our lives would be if you had not corrected my chess game that day?" Lucas asked. "All the time. I almost did not. I almost convinced myself to stay at my own table and mind my own business. I am so glad you did not. I am so glad you took that chance." "Me too. Best decision I ever made." Lucas pulled her to her feet and into his arms, swaying gently even though there was no music playing. "I love you, Natalie Sterling." "I love you too, Lucas Sterling, forever and always." Outside, Portland glittered in the darkness, full of possibilities and promises and millions of lives intersecting in unexpected ways. Somewhere in the city, maybe someone else was working up the courage to talk to a stranger, to take a risk, to change the entire course of their life with a single moment of bravery. Natalie hoped they would. She hoped they would find what she had found, this beautiful, messy, perfect love that had started with a correction over a chessboard and had grown into a family, a partnership, a life worth living. In their living room, the chess pieces sat frozen in their final positions, black king checkmated, white queen triumphant. It was a game they would play again tomorrow, and the next day and the day after that, for years and years to come. Sometimes Lucas would win, sometimes Natalie would win, but they would always play together, partners in every sense of the word. And that, Natalie thought as she rested her head against her husband's chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart, was the greatest victory of all.